Hello again, and welcome back to the Power Podcast with me sitting at the campfire yet again, and my multi-voiced cactus voiced by Sam and Alex.
That living is pain inside this cactus.
So much pain. Are we here just to suffer?
You know what? That is quite a unique circumstance you guys have there, right there. And you know what else is great about being unique? Well, we're gonna find out today.
You
Like
did,
mocked.
you did not just
Yeah,
do that.
here we go.
Oh my god! Oh,
Yep.
It's
So,
terrible.
this week we're going to be talking
To
about
be felt bad.
unique attributes and circumstances. So, what this really means is going to be very much loosely based on the concept of pretty much when a character or a special ability or a specific storytelling trope of the one character that is unique in their own specific way that is different from everyone else who is similar. It's very difficult, but basically pretty much the definition is that they have to be in some way or form unique. Now, I'm not talking about a character that is different from one another. I'm not talking about a character that is different because they're more powerful. I'm talking about a character that has a unique attribute to either their powers or to something about them that specifically gives them an advantage in some way, shape, or form, or even ultimately changes how their body, physical attributes, their personality, or even their character in general, or even their powers function on a mechanical or even visual level. So we're sort of going to be talking about a few different ones here, and the first half of this episode will pretty much be just talking about the actual, pretty much the invitation to just talk about characters that we think have a unique attribute and whether or not we do or don't count them. I will say this: I'm gonna be foregoing techniques. So if a person could use a technique that someone else later learned, I'm not counting that as a unique attribute. If someone is just very powerful, that is unique because they are the most powerful, but I don't consider that a unique attribute because someone else may have the same powers, they're just not as powerful. So now that we've pretty much got that out of the way, I'd like to hear like a basic example, but I'll probably give my first really easy example. Wolverine being a healing factor user, a Neogen, who then has metal bones, and that metal is adamantium, and it makes him pretty much nigh indestructible. This is obviously a unique attribute because his body doesn't necessarily produce it or anything, but specifically, no other character has this for a time, and then eventually later on, other characters have it. But naturally, superhumans with regenerative powers don't have this, and it's just kind of a unique thing to just give them metal on their bones. Now, people are doing it all the time because I think there's like 4 or 5 of them that now have it.
But
In the
even so,
comics,
it's different in the
it is
comics.
still different, yeah.
Lady, yeah, like in Lady Deathstrike, like she's got her growing fingernails and stuff. Whereas Wolverine has the bone protrusions that have that. Like that seems to be a thing that's just for him. Well, until
Lady
the
Deathstrike
other.
is only using adamantium in her bones because that's what the movie says. She's actually like got either a superpower that
Robot?
she just yeah, it's only in the films. In the comics, she's either like an android, or she's actually just got a mutant power to make her fingers very sharp.
Oh.
X-23, which is the clone of Wolverine that
Yep,
is female.
yep.
Which, oddly enough, is something they seem to do in comics.
Also, they do
Yeah.
it with
Why?
Hulk, with the Weapon X project, with the Weapon H product, which they basically give him adamantium claws. And then also at one point they finally figure a way to be able to do it to Sabretooth, where he gets 4 adamantium bone claws in his hands instead of
Oh
3.
whoa!
Because he's so
Ah.
much cooler, you guys. It's not to do with his fingernails at all. Either way, it's still unique to a level of degree. Still, I mean, like, even though that it wasn't unique anymore in its own comic, it was still unique to the whole world of superpowers because we've never necessarily seen anyone do that to someone. And again, that as a specific ability isn't a technique. They're stuck with this until either their bones are removed, they die, or they're just stuck with it forever. It really depends, but pretty much that's the whole thing. We'll go over to you, Alex. What about you?
Well, okay. Now, this is going to come out in left field, but I've been watching the Puppet Master movies recently, and it just so happens they're a perfect example of unique attributes in the first Puppet Master film. There's a bunch of different psychics with different, kind of like psychic powers, reading the future and, just predicting stuff. And each have unique attributes to their powers. Like, I mean, most of them are just like they can see into the future, they have premonitions. But one character has an ability called psychometry, where she can like sense the entire history of an object and who used it, how far it's traveled, like everything about it just by touching it. And this is a passive ability which can be a bit of a problem because, if she ever enters a crime scene, she, physically feels, the violation in that crime scene and just, has like a seriously bad time. Also, conversely, if someone's had a really good time, say for example, the film gives an example of some movie stars having sex in a particular hotel room, she also feels that as well. And yeah, the movie is pretty gauche about it, but yeah, that's just an interesting physical attribute. Like each of the psychics bring something to the table, and she's like a particular ability. Like she can't sense the future like the power, like other people with her powers can.
So
But she
everyone
can
else has the ability of future, and she has the ability of past. No one else
pretty
has that
much.
ability.
Also, it has to be done through tactile touch. Like, although the upside of that is that she seems to be more detailed in by touching it because she's got physical contact with it, and she can actually, have a better picture. Like, I think that, one of the characters described it saying, like, if she was to sit in a car, she would know all of the owners of that car, anybody who drove it, how many miles are on the car, and like everything that car had passed in its journeys just by sitting in it. It's just incredibly detailed, whereas like the other psychics are sort of like they have very vague premonitions of things that are going to happen. Of course, the problem is that she can't see into the future, so she doesn't know when she's going to get killed. It completely blindsides her.
So
So,
again, like she's the only one who can see into the past. Everyone else can only ever see into the future, but she can see only into the past.
yeah,
She's the only one like that.
yeah.
Okay. I will say something. I don't know if you guys specifically think of this as as something storytelling wise anyway. I always feel like in a world where superpowers, special creatures, special abilities, magic, and alien races exist, I always feel like if a person's power is supposed to be some random magical ability or some random superpower that operates differently no matter how many other people in the universe have it, I don't necessarily count that as a unique power anymore because the whole point of it being unique is unique and therefore it's no longer unique to the storytelling. It's like, oh, I have super strength. You're the only person in this entire current world who has super strength. Oh, I have telekinesis. You're the only person in the entire world that has telekinesis. And so, I don't know. That's my personal opinion on it. I don't know. What do you guys feel on it before we get to Sam's example?
I think it is just kind of
I
like,
would think that would make it a unique attribute.
yeah, it's
Is
just
it
more
visual?
unique.
It's just no, because I think it's a unique power. Again, the concept of a unique attribute is it's something that changes the original factor of a power to make it work more uniquely or have something more unique. It's something that is originally there. In storytelling, it it's it's a unique play. It's a unique sort of style of something. For instance, everyone has a different power. No one ever has the same. That's unique, and every character is unique. I don't consider that a unique attribute because at that point, that's just a world where everyone has superpowers, but they're not the same.
Hmm.
So that's just like saying, oh, everyone's unique. Everyone's a unique little snowflake. But then that means that no one's technically unique because no one's ever
Are you calling me
expected.
out, Joe?
Yes, I'm calling you out.
Reveal
No,
my unique
go,
snow.
I don't know.
snakeness.
That's my opinion. That's my opinion anyway. Someone can obviously back me up or hate me in the comments.
Oh yeah, we need engagement, so just pile on in the comments for this very niche opinion.
Indeed.
But yeah, what about yours, Sam?
Well, as you well know, because me and Joe were discussing this for a while the other day. I don't really get this topic, but I think I have a vague idea. So there's one character. Okay, I'm going to say something, and I want you to tell me if it is a unique attribute or not.
I tell you what, give your argument first, and then we'll
Okay.
discuss it afterwards.
Okay. In the Persona series.
No. No, God,
okay.
that's I had to.
Okay, in the Persona series, there are people who are Persona users. In that, whenever they enter this kind of world made by cognition of different people, cognition of like the world, they get the power of summoning an aspect of themselves. The main character in like 3, 4, and 5. Seriously, the groups only have one aspect that they call it is their persona. You can only use one persona. In the game, the main character can summon many different personas. Because he's the main character. Because he is the wild card. I am not sure. Is that a unique attribute? The fact that, as opposed to the people in his group, he can summon multiple personae.
Is there any particular story reason mechanically that actually explains why he is the only one who can summon multiple?
Yes, because he is the wild card.
That's the explanation.
Okay. I'll give a slightly different. Okay, more or less. This may be confusion. There is a man with a big nose called Igor. The Velvet Room, which is the room between life and death, reality and fiction, or something. Right. I don't. The game is somewhat. Yeah, you can just go there. It's just the place.
It's located in a plot hole, is where it is.
Yeah, it's located somewhere. It's located in the realm between.
I want to point this out.
Reality.
This is probably Sam's pitch to get me into Persona, and I'm not.
No,
I'm not taking it.
I'm not doing the pitch mostly because I'd be saying much better things. More or less, it's because you are the wild card. That's the whole idea: is that you are special because you're more or less the.
Okay, I'd like to hear Alex's opinion first on this. Do you think that's a unique attribute?
I would say, yeah. Look, story reasons aside, because it is sort of like, oh, because you can, is like because you're special. It's like it's
actually,
yeah. Go on.
I could. Actually, there actually is somewhat more of a story reason why you're the main character. In that, in every like 3, 4, and 5, you're the one entering into this place. Like more or less, like the third character gets bust, goes to this new school, and that's why he's the one who is the wild card. Whereas all of them just go to new schools, and that's why they're the wild cards.
Oh, okay. So technically, if he was in his old normal school, he would only have one. But because he went to a new school, because he's completely unknown to everyone else, his persona is a wild card.
We'll go with that. That's probably that's a valid explanation.
If that's the case, then yes, that's a unique attribute.
Yeah, I would say yes.
If it's just, oh, this guy's chosen to be the wild card, or this guy is the wild card for unexplored reasons other than he's the protagonist, or, oh, something vague magic, he's the wild card, I'd say no, because that's the same equivalent of saying, like, everyone has like one specific special power, but this one guy has the power to steal other powers, so therefore he has a unique attribute. No, that is just his power. Oh, no one has super strength but this one guy. Oh man, he's unique. No, that is just his power. No one else has that power. Whereas, like, if you're stating that because of the circumstance that he's put himself into, or he's been put into, that suddenly gives him a wide variety of different abilities now because of this new situation that has arisen for him. Because of that is a unique attribute. Because it is, normally, if he had been given this persona power, he would have just one. But because of this, he now has the ability to manifest as many as he wants.
Cool. I'm trying to think back in my mind why why there is any explanation.
I
Because
mean,
one
well,
of them is possessed by the god of death.
I mean, the real reason is because you're the main character in the video
Yes.
game. But
Protagonist syndrome.
yeah, you are literally you get this unique attribute by being an anime protagonist. Like pink hair.
Literally.
It's like, yeah, you literally are, but it's like that's the meta reason. But the reason is that you're in this new situation, you're beginning of this situation at the beginning of the story,
Okay, so
and like no one knows it.
we spoke about this. We spoke about this in a small briefing. We said like, do color changes count? Now, yes, if that is the only type of color that has ever been changed. For instance, we said Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. All other types of firebending is only red orangey flames, but Azula is the only person so far in all of the series, the comics, and Korra that has had blue firebending. And yes, everyone in the comments or anyone who's here or whatever will say, "Oh, but blue fire is just a hotter flame." Yes, but the point still stands is that she can passively generate this fire, and all of her firebending thus forth is now blue. She is the only person who wields it, who can constantly use it at the same normal capacity as regular firebenders can. And we already know that she is one of the best, but she's not the best. There are other people who are better than her. So just because that her flame is hotter does not necessarily mean that it is about her being more powerful.
I think there's also like in the comics there is like sort of a sort of more explanation, more rounding of like how she is with her unique attribute. It's that the way that she developed her firebending, the way that like she was encouraged to, at the very least, was that she went against her teachers of firebending and just went for like the biggest hit attacks, like precision, sure, but when precision won't do, she will like completely go all out for the ultimate attack, not really caring of anybody else in the way, no, not caring about collateral damage, which is what you're not supposed to do. And that's like,
Yet
again, it's sort of
she was a prodigy that never got burned by her own flames.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, why should I care? I'm sure that won't come back to haunt her in some kind of mental trauma or anything. But
One would potentially argue that the reason as to why she went mental is oxygen deprivation, due to the flames completely combusting all the air around her. But who knows?
But that's just a theory. A
Um,
film theory.
Film theory? I would say though that like there are quite a lot of different abilities and techniques that are shown in Avatar: The Last Airbending. One specific one that I guess I would actually state, and this is gonna be a little bit of a controversy, is I don't count metal bending because it is a technique, but I do count lava bending because technically only those who were born as an earthbender from a earth and firebender parentage. So it means that at some point they have to have at least a firebending parent and an earthbending parent for them to have actually become an earthbender that can then make earth into lava.
Wait. Isn't it like a unique attribute something that you're not born with?
No, it can
Is
be
it
something
something
that
that's
you're
out
born
there?
with.
No, it
It
can
can.
be, but
It just ultimately changes the effect of your powers in some way, shape, or form. Because again, Azula isn't born with balloon flames, but eventually it becomes her natural go-to, and never again, other than the one time you ever see her perform normal flames, do you ever see her use orange flames. Every time after that, blue flames all the way. Which is again why technically, like, again, in that regard, like, yes, technically, oh, it's unique because that it's not unique because at least 2 or 3 people use it. That's still a very unique thing because again, it is based on birth. And again, they are earthbenders normally, but there's a unique factor about their powers that allows them to access lava. So I'd specifically count that as one, albeit it's not as rare as a one of a kind. Doesn't have to be one of a kind, but it's still that thing of like, even if Azula wasn't the only blue firebender, the estimate would have to be very low for her to still be considered a unique attribute user, or her fire to be a unique attribute. Any other ones that anyone wants to talk about? Like, I know that you specifically would like to have spoken about another particular character Sam, from a comic series?
I mean, dare I? Dare I bring up such a good character?
I'm readying my drink.
Good, I will. Going to bring up Spider-Man.
All
Okay.
right, take a drink,
Surprise,
everyone.
surprise. The reason being is I'm going old school now. Original Peter Parker, actually, believe it or not, because he is unique. In the quite a few, I should say, of the Spider-Man that come after him, don't have radioactive blood like he does.
And that is
I
due
did
to
not know
him being bitten by a radioactive spider. That's one of his
Yes.
weird mutations because of it. And
See, I mean, I should say he at one point in the comics, I'm pretty sure this has been retconned, he killed Mary Jane because of his radioactive having fun
stuff.
times with her
Yeah.
stuff. That happened. I hope that's retconned.
To be fair, they
That
do
did
the same
happen.
thing with Hulk, but that is exactly derived from his powers. His
What
powers
is
of
it with
messing.
Marvel doing that? This is like,
No,
having
I'm just
making
talking about
babies and stuff
radiation.
is
I'm not talking
happening.
about necessarily like killing them during that, but
I mean, I can understand why the Hulk more than I can Spider-Man.
I mean, to be fair with Hulk, it's the same thing as the Superman equivalent. It's that thing of surely it would just be like an actual real shotgun blast.
Anyway,
And now that's in your head.
anyway. The reason I'm saying this is because I did have to tell Joe this because it's not really well known that Miles Morales in the comics didn't actually get bit by a radioactive spider. Because in the Ultimate Universe, it's a spider genetically altered by Oscorp with like OO formula or some kind of it was some kind of like it was like the super special soldier formula that made Captain America that they tried to make genetically altered spiders with.
Nevertheless, it's not an
also
actual
Peter-
radioactive isotope.
Yes. And the Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara spliced his DNA with a spider, not by accident. So he's not actually radioactive, which has helped in his times. And quite a few of the other spiders in like the Marvel universe have got their powers through magic, depending on the time frame, or like Spider-Man Ultimate through genetically altered spiders.
But yeah,
Just like in the movie, actually.
I'd consider that as a unique attribute again, because again, it's that thing of they're getting their powers in a different way. I mean, technically, they are getting their powers from a different source, so it's technically a different discovery. But I'd still state that Peter Parker's one specifically is a unique attribute because of the way that he gets his power. Everyone else, their powers aren't necessarily unique, but the unique factor of it is extra abilities and powers that they get that are nothing to do with the original formula. For instance, Miles Morales can use electricity, and what is it? There's another one that's specifically
Invisibility.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, and
But I think that kind of isn't it? I think that is meant to do with the spider that bites him. if I
yeah,
remember
but
correctly.
my point is that like that's his unique like attribute to his particular powers, because again, Peter Parker, he has again the wall climbing thing, and he has the spider sense. Miles Morales, on the other hand, still has the wall climbing thing. Arguably, he might also have spider sense, but then he also has these extra abilities, which again give him different functions. And he doesn't have radioactive blood, however, Peter Parker does. That is technically
what-
to their own specific, unique attributes to that functionality of that power.
And Miguel O'Hara has poison-tipped nails and the
Yeah,
ability of actually organic webbing.
Yes,
Whereas Miles Morales and Spider-Man have to make web shooters, depending on the continuity.
depending. I mean, Tobey
Fair thing.
Maguire had organic web shooters, but then like Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland, they both have web shooters, like actual like gadgets.
I mean more because at one point Peter Parker died and accepted new powers from the other, and then actually got organic web shooters. Then they retconned it, so he didn't. So I had to make web shooters again because I think it's because the Andrew Garfield movie came out that he had to go back to normal web shooters.
And started looking like Andrew Garfield.
No, I think it was always still nerd. I think it was always no. I think it was because One More Day happened.
Oh
I'm you
God.
one more day. Why would you ruin everything? But no, yeah, that's my history of Spider-Man over.
Okay. Well, do you have any others, Alex, that you'd like to discuss? Any ones that you particularly think might be a unique attribute, or even specifically an
Uh,
argument for a unique attribute?
well, I don't know. Not in popular, you know, things. I guess it's sort of like talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Would combustion bending be a technique or a unique attribute?
They never explain it. Now, here's the thing: they never actually explain whether or not it's because of a tattoo or if it's because that like there's a technique behind it. But both of them have a tattoo. I'd state that similar to the Wolverine thing, if someone has or if they have placed a tattoo on themselves, I'd count it as they're giving themselves a unique attribute.
Hmm.
Because
I've always wondered about that.
I was going to go into the specific argument of obviously not only them, but also technically any specific beings that had powers but then affected them later through some kind of strange alteration or altercation. For instance, you've got one specific one, and I know Sam, you're going to hate this. One Piece, uh, where a character actually has a power to like turn themselves into gas, but through being an actual genuine chemist, they know all the different types of poisonous gases, and therefore they're able to like absorb it through their powers. And originally they could only turn into basic gases, but as long as they can get their hands on more gases, they can basically become any of the gases that they've sort of absorbed a small amount of. And if they absorb a large amount of them, they can actually become the size of the gas clouds that they've actually accumulated up to. And at one point, the guy creates a poison that, upon contact with the air, it actually petrifies living flesh. And he actually just becomes this cloud, and so he can fight as this like giant cloud of flesh decaying. Um, so again, I'd say that that's technically it's almost like it's not necessarily a technique because he's not discovered that particular way of doing it personally. It's an ability and a function of that power, but upon doing so, he's kind of giving himself unique attributes to be to do that thing. But I'd say technically it's the factor of the function of who that power ended up with, because again, the fruits are the powers are based on fruits that when someone eats them, that's the only person who has that power. But it's a unique attribute as to who it ends up with, and it just so happened to end up with a guy who actually knows a lot about chemical gases and biological warfare. So I don't know. That might be a grey area for the two of you, but I
I
feel
would
like
say
that's
it is, yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah, on the
because it's
borderline.
just it's not as if he actually his powers developed. He just used them slightly differently.
no. Okay, fair
He
enough. No, I'll admit defeat on that one.
was one there is one I just thought of, and I'm not sure because I need to ask: Can it be time? Can it be something that you gain and then lose? Each attribute.
Relatively, yes. Depending, it really depends.
Because I'm going to say Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four 2, Rise of the Silver Surfer. That cult classic, the one I defend.
You
I
know
like.
what? Are you talking about the one where because he touches the Silver Surfer, he now has the ability to take other people's powers who have cosmic abilities?
Yeah, he's able to swap powers, but also at the end absorb all the powers. Does that count as a unique attribute because something he's gained and it's nothing really to do with his other power?
I feel like that's more like him just being given a secondary power rather
I
than a
don't
Mm,
unique
know,
attribute.
because in the yeah, I'd say it's
Because it
more a
doesn't
unique
necessarily.
power.
No,
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, I'm just saying it's more a unique power. It's not just a attribute on top of a power. It's like, he's gained a completely new set of powers. This is sure he's the only one that has that, ability now
It
on the
doesn't
earth,
necessarily.
but
It's not like an ability that affects the main function of his race, nor does it affect the main function of his body. It's a power that is literally, I will take your powers or swap them. It doesn't affect his original power other than adding on to other powers, and at that point, that's just him having any cosmic power plus his own, or any cosmic power instead of his own. And therefore, I'd consider that to be another power, unique in that universe, in that movie. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily consider that to actually be one.
Okay, now I vaguely know more about this topic we're discussing.
Okay, no, that's fair enough.
That's
And now
that
that
has helped a bit, actually.
now that we've gotten used to this, we're now going to completely swap this around.
Whoa! Turn the
Whoa!
tables around.
So in Anime Tales, we actually use unique attributes a lot. As a matter of fact, almost all of you have played as characters in the playtesting sessions. You've actually played as characters with a unique attribute at some point. For instance, Sam, you played as Vale. Alex, you've played as Toxie, and you've also played as another character with a unique attribute. I swear you have. Yeah, Warhead.
Yeah, Warhead, where I can shoot the explosions not just out of my hands, but any part of my body.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is that the downside of that is that, well, I think we decided this later that when we were rejigging it, and also kind of like justifying my terrible rolls when it came to heat damage.
Yes.
Is that I take like 2 times fire damage because like it's all over my body and it's like heating me up too much. So I'm just like I'm constantly getting heat at the risk of heat stroke.
So the funny thing is, in Amite Tales and in most other tabletop RPGs, you can't necessarily get an actual like special ability without some level of like backlash or downside for it, because otherwise, well, you'd be absolutely just unstoppably unfair. So obviously there needs to be like a level of like fairness towards it. So the way that we sort of counterbalance that is for every new special ability, feature, multiplier, change in effect that mechanically grants you a new function, a downside or a drawback or a weakness of equal function has to be in place. For instance, with Alex, Warhead is normally supposed to only generate explosions just from their hands, but they now have the ability, and well, since the very beginning, they had the ability to be able to generate explosions from any part of their body: hand, mouth, face, back, any place on their legs or feet or torso or head or neck or heck, even the end of their hairs, as long as they're still attached to their head. But there then needed to be at least one downside, and because of that, the downside was 1.5 times fire damage. So if you take 6, you'll instead take 9. If you take 12, you'll then take 15. Well, not 15. Bit of a brain fart moment there.
Yeah,
you
that was
then
it.
take
That would
18.
be a bit too unfair unfair on me, really, wouldn't it?
But it is that thing of whenever a person takes damage, whenever you take fire damage, that's then when that multiplies. Now, it doesn't always need to necessarily be a weakness. It could always be something like we've done a couple of them where basically the user loses certain functions of their powers, like with both Toxie and Vale. Where originally Void Children don't have the ability to turn into darkness. They have the ability to generate it and manipulate whatever they generate. But Sam, you actually had it where your character turns into the darkness that they create. And because of that, you then said, I'll have an immunity. Now, the way that we state unique attributes is a lot of the time, you cannot have any more than 1 damage immunity. And because of that, it was physical, so that no, basic bullets or fists or basic attacks will actually hurt you or hit you. But then there was obviously a couple of loopholes. If something's made out of a poisonous substance, if something is using a spatial damage or anything like that, it would still hit you or hurt you. And again, you took away some different things. You said, "Oh, I'll take 2 times light damage, but I want to be able to do this other particular ability." So you then took away the special function of your vitality, because during your transformation you get extra vitality. But you said, "No, I'll take that off, and I'll just have it that I can do this." And then obviously,
And we made it
no, go on.
made it so that if I do get hit, if it breaks my vitality, I then have to roll to not be punted out of my shadow mode and back into normal mode, which I don't think we ever did happen.
No. I don't think that. It didn't. No, it didn't ever happen except from. No. I think you're right. Yeah, it didn't ever happen.
So, 'cause, he did have a guy who turned my powers off.
Yes, yeah.
That prick. But we never actually got a guy who actually done me enough damage to beat my vitality.
No. But then when we had Toxie sacrificed the ability to generate corrosive substances, but then instead got the ability to manipulate it. But then also, instead of being able to turn substances of poison into corrosive, they then got the ability to manipulate corrosive substances inside of people and basically make them vomit or pretty much make them feel at least sick enough to be disorientated for a few seconds. This ability to control corrosive substance allowed you to control batteries in the first couple of sessions.
It's so great. I mean, I'm actually really happy that I managed to get to do that, because I think one of my miscellaneous items as well was just some batteries. And I'm like, stay tuned, folks. I will be using these. And like, yeah, it's actually incredibly useful. It is kind of like, it. I mean, I sometimes, I think, oh, it's kind of annoying that I can't generate corrosive because of this thing. But then it's given me so much more leeway to do other cool stuff that I don't even notice it most of the time. I got to make more people vomit as well. Like, I need to. It's not something I never thought I'd say out loud, but in the context of this podcast, you know what I'm talking about. I need to use these unique attributes just a bit more, because I
Yeah.
keep like, yeah. One of the feedbacks we got actually was that in the last fight is that when I could, I get too bogged down in my SPMAs and what I can't do, then I forget what I can do. And yeah, I know that's kind of a side issue, but just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the thing with almost any player. I was actually going to say one particular one just to go from Animite Tales into like another system is you could also do something very similar with the concept of like, for instance, if you're a paladin, and I guess you could say with a unique a concept of a unique attribute is the concept of like you are either a paladin or a cleric or I don't know, let's say a warlock, and perhaps maybe you're an Aasimar or a tiefling, uh, based on one of those two specific things, like an Aasimar, and you're like part angel or part god or whatever, and it actually turns out that your god is basically the father of the angel that fathered you or something like that, and it's like, oh, I basically believe in my grandpa. Or the same with a warlock, where it's like I'm the daughter of like this horrible like patron, the patron who of warlocks, and basically mummy gave me an allowance of like a million mana. And
But see, the question is, does your grandpa believe in you?
The thing is, if you're a paladin of Zeus, there's a high chance you probably are.
that is fair enough. Yes, yeah.
either your son or his grandson, which might at that time be his son. Because
Actually,
of the way he is.
That
Yeah.
could be a downside of the unique attribute, is just inheriting all this family dysfunction. And it constantly messes with your head.
We kind of got a little bit of this because we also stated that unique attributes don't actually have to be the actual literal mechanical variant, because like technically a unique attribute could also be like your specific, as you said, like family life or social status. Because if you think about it, like when we had it with Bill's character and Kane's character way back, we had these two characters. One was the son of the most powerful man in the world, and his whole journey is to become powerful enough to be able to fight him so that he can take his dad's place as like the not only the world's most powerful man, but literally so that he can earn his inheritance early, or at least a certain sum of it, so that he can basically go off and do whatever he wants. The only problem is that like because of this, we kitted up and built together the most overpowered boss, and it was just this thing of like, even if this guy was just counted as a mini boss or as a boss, you have to fight him one-on-one, and that is a very tall order. And we had it at the end of that campaign that he fought him and he lost within 2 turns, and it was this thing of like that kind of exponential growth is ridiculous. Another particular one is the fact that one character is from another universe. So he has information on stuff that other people don't. Like, he went to a universe where magic existed. He went to a universe where it's kind of like in the future. He went to a universe where it's literally just like a bleak, empty place where whatever monsters or gods fought there and just left the entire place in ruinage and just left. And he's just there and just like, yeah, I'm not staying here anymore. And he's seen all this kind of stuff. He's learned from that. So I guess like backstory is also technically kind of a unique attribute if it helps the character function in any way of role play as well as mechanics. Unlike in story, where a unique attribute can either be visual or mechanical. Whereas like in this, it's actually like more to do with mechanical or role play aspects. We've had characters with like obviously like split personalities and stuff like that, where one personality has one power, the other personality has another. We've had all sorts of different like types of weird ways that people have built their characters to match up to
Oh,
certain descriptions.
oh God! It's funny you mentioned that because in the same campaign with that multiple personalities thing, that I also created a character with the unique attribute of not having any vocal cords, so not being able to speak. And oh boy, was that interesting!
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What?
because I had telepathy, but it's like my power level wasn't right up there enough yet. So it's like, do you want to hear anything? I think I was called Experiment B2. And like, do you want to say anything about the situation B2? Roll. No, I don't. Keep that to myself.
That was a
Of course.
strange one. Yeah, that was. Oh man, that's such a long time ago now.
Yeah, that was you've been on many journeys together. Um, yeah, sorry, it just came into my head because it's like, well, I mean, it's not necessarily a. I mean, it isn't a unique attribute in the sense that there are people who can't talk and there are people who have telepathy, but my specific situation that I created my character meant that I had my vocal cords perfectly removed, so that I had to use my telepathic powers. So that
See, I
was
think
like, would that count? I don't know.
No, I definitely. I mean, again, not necessarily like mechanically. I mean, technically, you could have had that as mechanically, but like again, for more role play aspect and backstory aspect, that technically counts as a, again, like non-official unique attribute, but it's still a unique attribute nonetheless, because your character cannot function in one specific way, so they have to do something else to do another. So it technically makes them the ultimate telepath in one specific regard, because the only way they can communicate is using their powers.
well, except for not getting the good rolls, sadly.
That was the thing because it's like that was my thing. I had this whole thing sort of planned out in my head. It's like they came from like a cult which was basically forcing them to like generate their powers really highly, and that included like mutilating them and stuff. And they were actually very talkative normally, but they were just sort of punished for that. But I couldn't communicate any of that because I never got the roles, so I kind of screwed myself there. No, but still, yeah. Anyway.
No, I think that's a good enough point to make. To be fair, you've all had like very interesting characters to go about. I mean, one specific character I had was this one-armed slime guy, and that's not necessarily the unique thing. The unique thing was the fact that my brother was playing as a character who couldn't speak the common language, and my character could speak enough of my brother's character's language to be able to only converse with him. But if he was to meet anyone else with the same language that my brother's character had, they wouldn't understand him, because he learns a specific set amount of dialogue that this one specific person uses. It's like if you were to learn slang and you only ever spoke in slang, and you try to speak to someone else who is actually like an English speaker or an American speaker or any other particular language speaker, and you're speaking in slang of that specific language. Some people will just be like, I know that those words are of this tongue, but I don't really know what you're getting at. Like, I don't really see what you're trying to say. And it was kind of interesting to see again a character that couldn't talk but could talk to at least only one other character.
I think we lost Sam.
Oh no,
Sam,
Sam.
Sam, no.
So okay, well, whilst we're waiting for Sam, I guess the last bit really is, If you were to make a unique circumstance for a character or a unique attribute for a character, what would you do? Like, what kind of thing would you do?
Actually, I am actually interested in a concept that we talked about a while ago. Yay, Sam's back! I summoned you with the power of
Samuel.
love.
Sorry about that. My internet decided just to crash for some reason.
That's all right, man. We're just saying. We're just saying, like, if you could make a unique attribute for a character, in any specific circumstance for a game, what would you do and how would you make it? And Alex was just about to say something.
Oh, yeah, we talked about this for a while, and I wanted to save it for Sam because Sam was asking me about this, but I just love this idea of like an effigy animation character. You know, I think we called her Lilith, the mother of monsters. Where
Oh
with effigy
yes.
animation, you can yeah, with effigy animation you can just like well, it's exactly what it says. You just have an effigy of something and you bring it to life and have various powers attached to that. My power was that I could essentially make them even bigger. Like I could do vague representations of what they're made for, and then like use my powers on them and turn them into sort of Attack on Titan sized monsters. But in order to do that, I'd have to sacrifice them as sort of auxiliary health, pretty much. Like I'm literally putting myself into them, or some of my life essence into them, to like give more life to them than they would initially have as part of their effigy.
I see.
So, and I could do anything with that as well. I was thinking, like, well, I could learn baking and I could create a volcanic chocolate monster.
I love
I
that.
could like learn, yeah, I could just like learn woodworking and I'll have like a giant splinter monster. Or I could have like metal. Like the possibilities, yeah, just learning various trades of crafting and stuff, and like just making vague sort of effigies, but yet with my powers, like animating them into something bigger and even better.
Alex, are you just want to make Rita Repulsa from the Power Rangers?
Shut up!
Make my
Shut up!
monster
No.
See,
grow!
I genuinely think that that's a really cool idea. But the reason why, because you came to me about this, the reason why you said that you wanted it to be Lilith was Lilith, the mother of monsters or the mother of demons, depending on whichever
Yeah.
translation. And I really liked the idea that you had with that because you and I went back and forth and said, well, if it was based on the different sizes, have it a D4 and it's entirely random whenever you make it. It's like you could make a little tiny clay creature and then you roll a D4 and it's either going to stay that small and be alive or become bigger depending on each different roll. And then the amount of health that is taken off of you is equal to that D4. For instance, I was either 1 all the way up to 4. But then when you get bigger creatures, it then becomes that thing of like, okay, well, I can now make a creature up to 5 meters tall. I can now make a creature up to 10 meters tall or 15 meters tall. Like basically the size of like a small. Well, I say a small building, like a very large building. And with that being said, with the whole concept of like that power, that could really be an interesting thing of like, oh, this thing is like a stage 5 or 4 creature, and I've had to sacrifice 4 or 5 health points into it. And you're like, I could really do with those health points back. Sorry, this random minion creature that is basically like the equivalent of my child. I now have to kill you because I just need those extra 4 HP back.
It's like, come to mummy. Come to mother, dear. Mother knows best.
I also like that because, as you said, like you're crafting different things, and therefore you can technically craft different monsters. Like that is such an incredible idea, especially because I think you said like it would be reanimation that you like ended up with because then you wanted at the end like, oh, you don't have the downside of you can only bring the dead back to life. It's as a bonus, but then the extra downside is to whatever things that you basically create, the original form is basically completely like reconstructed and mutated because of like the power that you're giving it is basically tainting it and tarnishing the exact original template of whatever it was. And so it's like
Yeah.
that thing of like whatever you're bringing to life is now being brought to life in this new form or new way.
I can make a human composed, mostly of teeth. Just all over the body if I wanted to, for example. Just extra tooth armor. I call him the Tooth Fairy.
Of course, depending on the amount of abilities that it would technically create, obviously there would be more downsides as it went on to the for the sake of the unique attribute balancing. But that's still a very interesting and very unique power to just be like, oh, I need statues. I can make a vague clump of this thing and it kind of looks like something, and then it just comes to life, and whatever energy I've put into it, it will now become a random new looking creature or anything like that. I don't know. What about you, Sam? Do you have any particular like thoughts on like a unique attribute for something either on a tabletop game or in Animite Tales or anything like that?
I remember, to be honest, I have two. One of them is very kind of somewhat similar to Alex because it is also effigy animation, but is also quite different.
Oh yeah.
It was the idea we talked about this quite a while back because I was playing Infamous Second Son and also was watching Teen Titans. The ability to pull things out of televisions, more or less.
Yes, yes, I remember this like
Like,
spatial and effigy animation.
what was he? What is the guy called from Teen Titans that
Isn't
has
he
like
called like
Control Freak?
Control? There we go. I was either going to say Toy
Yeah.
Master or Control Freak.
Oh, Control Freak. Aye, he is the wee remote that pulls things out of televisions.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that would be a cool. Would that be a unique attribute, or would that be just the two powers combined?
Technically, it would be a unique attribute because spatial allows you to manipulate space, but technically the ability to be able to pull something out and just be like, hey, your specific originated size is up to 5 meters, so I can now, make a, pull you out of the TV and now you're now alive or something. There is a
And
there is a
my
spatial
puppet.
there is a spatial power that allows you to do that, but technically it would be a unique attribute if you actually had those two powers, because the spatial ability in question is called dimensional breaching or something like that, or multi-dimensional something or other. I can't remember fully, but basically it's the Omegan power that basically means that you can jump into pictures and live in those universes, or you can pull things out of pictures and make them into an actual real object, because it's like as if that painting is a new world or a new dimension.
Yeah, because there actually is a character that kind of does that in Second Son. He is my favorite character. He is the nerd with glasses and a hoodie, and was bullied because, of course. And what's his powers? The power of television.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the other one I had is not based on that, but it's semi based on. Have you ever seen The Hogfather?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The power I had was telepathy, but the ability to manipulate subtly but on a wide scale, if you have like tissue samples of them. Like in the film, they
Oh yeah,
go to
the
Tooth
collection
Fairy's
of
castle,
teeth. Yeah.
and more or less subtly now, like not full, like they manipulate all of the children of Earth for a bit, I think, to stop believing in the Hogfather, ergo Santa Claus, to the point that he begins to not exist because belief governs being alive. But that's kind of the idea I had, is that telepathy, but wide scale, but very minute kind of things, very subtle manipulations.
Okay.
Like an example being, I get like far, far away, someone's like 30 miles away, subtly, you will put ketchup on a hot dog. You like ketchup on your hot dogs. Things like that.
But
You're
I
very
don't
subtle
like
things.
ketchup on my hot dog.
Biology,
Ah!
manipulation, and telepathy, or just straight up telepathy. Either one would work, because you could just state that, oh, you can make someone do something regardless of range. Downside is you need a piece of their tissue. You need an actual piece of their DNA, and it's like, oh, you need either a tooth or some of their blood or something.
Or a nail.
Yeah, I'd say the furthest I'd go is nail. I don't think I'd say hair though. But yeah, like basically, if you have that, it's like you pretty much can have that, and either they have to roll disadvantage with willpower, or like there's some like major like downside to the power again on top of that, which is like maybe like only one command per tissue sample. So it's like, oh, you have like a tooth, and it's like, okay, you can tell them to do something small, and they cannot resist it. But after that, like, that's it. That specific thing is done. You can't use that tooth, or you can't use that nail, or you can't use that, entire thing of blood or something.
It just
Yeah.
magically disintegrates.
Either that, or it just basically becomes useless in the terms of your power, which again could be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Or no, never mind. I was going to mention the Dead Zone TV show, but never mind.
I was gonna
No,
say we're kind of running out of
Yeah,
time,
we're
but
out
I
of
was
time.
just
We gotta get
I was
going.
just gonna say the one that I was gonna do is specifically I've obviously done like tons of them over the span of the game. The one that I'd specifically say that I actually really enjoyed making at one point was basically there was a power that obviously Bill made that was obviously just the ability to like loot powers from people, like, oh, once they're dead he can take them, or if someone is like willing to like take them, he'll be able to. But there was one specific one that I really like, and I'm gonna say this one. Overwrite. The user of the power has the power of copying and nullification. Upon touching someone, usually copying will allow the person to temporarily, for a certain amount of time, copy a power. Once that time limit is up, that's it. Now, the special ability of this power user is upon touching someone, he nullifies them and takes their power. He copies their power, but then nullifies them. The only problem is, they're nullified for the entire duration of how long he's copying their power for. He can then go over to another person and copy their power, nullifying them, but he then overwrites their original power and gives them the previous power he copied. He can keep doing this as many times as he wants, however, he can only do it up to a specific limit of the amount of powers that he could normally copy without the extra power of nullification. But since there is the power known as favoritism, or personal favorite, he can make one power that he copies permanent, which means that if he chose to like copy 8 people, the first person would have to wait until the final power that he has is just gone. And because of that, if the person actually like wanted to completely just like nullify a bunch of people, swap and overwrite their powers as and so on, eventually he could just go on the 8th person, oh, I favorite your power. That 8th person is now stuck with the 7th person's power. The 7th person's power is stuck with the 6th, and so on and so forth, until eventually it got down to the first person who has no powers, and until the final one is relinquished, he is stuck with that, and everyone else around him is stuck with someone else's power that was not their own. Again, it's kind of a unique factor, because instead of just having I nullify, or I steal your power, or I copy your power, it's, oh no, I take your power for a certain amount of time, but the next person who I copy, they're gonna get your power now. I don't have it anymore, sort of thing. Now, obviously, it's based off of a time limit, or it's based off of the function of if the person dies, or themselves gets nullified, or just eventually relinquishes it, or reaches their maximum point, and then basically that's it. That's done, and they start a new, they start a new level of stocks, and then basically that's all gone, and then everyone is set back to normal. I don't know. That was always one of my favorite ones that I built. I don't know if you guys would necessarily have anything to say against that or for it.
No, pretty much. I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. We're in agreement
Yeah.
for once.
I guess
once.
I guess I'll say one last thing that might actually be controversial then. Black Clover. The concept of everyone having magic, and this one boy has no magic. And then it turns out that he actually is the only one who can wield nullifying anti-magic as a specific weapon. And because of that, he's the only person in the series who not only doesn't have magic, which is a unique attribute on itself, and he also is the only person who has anti-magic, which is again a unique attribute in on itself. So there we go. I guess that's pretty much it. Unless if I think this one is something that we could always come back to and actually have another discussion over stuff that we really like about this, because again, there's so many possibilities on
Oh,
unique
yeah.
Yeah.
attributes.
I
I
mean, a
mean-
lot of it is just us, spitballing ideas, for new characters and like how we can game certain, powers.
I would definitely
to
love
be
to do
really
that as a
different.
podcast at some point, where we just literally talk about like different possible characters, maybe even building some on a podcast or something.
And me trying to figure out what these rules mean.
Fair
I
enough.
mean, from this only, like I know what it means in game. Outside the game, less so.
It is very difficult to actually pin down and explain, because the actual definition for unique is literally one of a kind, or the best there is, the strongest there is, the fastest there is. And I was like, well, in the game, the unique attribute system doesn't necessarily work that way. And to be fair, personally, the rules that I wanted for this one was more of a discussion on what we thought was unique rather than the best. Because obviously, it goes without saying that the best is potentially the unique because they are at the top. No one else can beat them yet. And I didn't really want to sort of make that a discussion. Because then at that point, we'd just be talking about the most powerful. And I feel like if we wanted to talk about that, I feel like we just talk about, again, OP characters, Mark II.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of OP characters, I did have one last one. I'll say this will be my last idea for a possible one. Okay, because I want to know. I'm uncertain now if this one is. Now that I mention it, remember I mentioned Darth, the guy from Star Wars, the Sith Lords, who can absorb all life force by landing on a planet,
Oh yeah, the
Oh,
most
yeah, yeah.
OP of all Sith.
and like more or less is unkillable, somewhat. But he has great hunger. He's a bit like Galactus, actually. Now that I think about it, would he count? Would that count as a unique attribute?
He's
Did
he's the only one with that specific thing where he just absorbs life force to keep himself alive.
But did he learn how to do that, or was he just born with it?
He learned through.
Uh,
It's
actually-
a technique.
I mean, I'm not actually sure if he learned. I don't know how. They don't explain it. I think they kind of purposely don't explain it because
can he turn it off?
no, because he's
Then
no.
I will allow it to be a unique attribute, because again, if someone learns how to do something but they can't turn it off, at that point it is them making a unique attribute for themselves. Because again, I wouldn't argue that whether or not if Wolverine or someone else basically put the adamantium into their bones themselves, I still wouldn't be like, that doesn't count. I'd still count that, So yeah, no, definitely. Ironically, though, Deadpool is not unique. he
No,
is
'cause
unique, but he doesn't have a unique attribute because his powers can heal. And he literally gets them from Wolverine in the comics anyway.
Yeah.
But thank you everyone for listening to this.
Oh wait,
What?
he does have one unique attribute:
What's that?
reality sense.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Although that
Oh,
is
yeah.
technically a power, not an actual unique attribute. It's a unique power.
Is a unique attribute for the fact that he's taken so much torture that he has. Therefore, his healing factor that's cued him in to reality sense.
I'm not going to allow that.
I don't know.
To be continued.
Well, if
This
anyone really
discussion.
enjoyed this, please definitely listen in for more episodes like this. This is the Power Podcast, where we just talk about nerdy stuff like superpowers, magic, and all other different bits and pieces of fiction. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, or even, hell, put one of those comments, and we'll see exactly what you have to say and what you think was or was not a unique attribute, and what did we say. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Maybe you have something that you'd like to get off your chest. Either way, thank you very much for listening, and take care.
Bye.
See you in the future.
Ciao, ciao. For now.